No, it ain't.
It's the wonder of nature, baby!
Yes, we'll reel around the flag, boys will reel it once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom. We will reel it from the hillside, all together from the plain, shouting a battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will reel around the flag, boys will reel it once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom.
All right, I know I'm late again, but without any further delay, welcome back to Uncut History here on Readout Productions. And what? I guess I don't have to hold the thing up. Am I coming through? Because I didn't do an audio check before I went live. I just was going, gotta go live, just tap, let's go. Oh, I didn't see if the green bar showed the audio. So, let me know in the chat if we're sounding good. I'm going to presume we're sounding good and just keep rolling until somebody tells me otherwise. Well, it's been a week since we last talked live. What have I been up to? Dear Lord, my brain has been frayed in a jillion different directions. And well, first thing off the bat, last week we had a special live stream to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, complete with all of the wonderful, fluent French pronunciation. I know it was high-tech stuff I was doing there. I'm glad I am honored. You people commended me for my pronunciation of the French language or any other language, including the English language, which of course I'm a master of because I am speaking English right now. Totally a master. It's some good Rebel Red. Anyways, so we did the stream last week and I started with like a special opening. I decided, I want to do something very, very so important for this commemoration. So I decided to pick a sample of Eisenhower's speech that he gave to all of the Allied forces on the morning of the landing. And I put some music over it. It's music that I licensed through Epidemic Sound, which, by the way, if you are a creator out there on the TubeU, you're making content, I would encourage getting a subscription through Epidemic Sound. You're still fond of me French, eh? I knew it. You're fond of me French, like you're fond of me lobster. So I license out royalty-free music annually for Epidemic Sound. Several other YouTubers I'm in contact with use it as well. And that's what I use to put in the background, just add some nice, gravitas to the situation. I got copywritten on it. Not now. I do use a copywritten song for our intro here, a variant of the Battle Cry of Freedom, which is done by the 9th Illinois String Band. Now, the reason I chose that is because I can dual share the very, very small revenue I get from videos. This is a monetized channel. Knock on wood at the moment, until the gods decide that, nope, you've said something inappropriate because you decide to educate somebody. So I picked that because I'm not really caring about revenue, especially when it comes from the streams, but I want to be able to have it live and available for people to enjoy. So I'm like, okay, if we choose a dual revenue sharing, that might work out, make people happy. Where did the sound? Please tell me you're not. Oh, Bob, don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. We have sound here. So yeah, I'm now. Stop making me paranoid. Why do the lieutenants always make me paranoid? Anyways, What was I getting at? Oh yeah, so my stream got copyright struck, not because of the revenue sharing song I use at the start. That's fine. That's fine. No. Do you want to know why? Killswitch Engage claimed the song that's being used, not the song, but is claiming the audio of Eisenhower. I don't know how this is working. This is called YouTube is broken at the moment. So yeah, Killswitch Engage, apparently the computer that runs the YouTube algorithm decides, yes, speech by Eisenhower with royalty-free orchestral music. That is a song by Killswitch Engage. And the only thing I know about Killswitch Engage is that they made a song that CM Punk once used for his introduction before he found a much better song. I'm sorry, Cult of Personality by Living Color is a far superior rock song than whatever Killswitch Engage does. I am an old soul when it comes to music. Okay, he's putting me at ease. Very good. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. So yeah, that's the first thing we're gonna talk about. The fact that somehow the YouTube algorithm decided to copyright. It sent the alarms out because I was using dialogue from General Eisenhower, and it's Killswitch. It's equal to Killswitch Engage. I do not know how we got here. I do not know how we crossed that bridge, but we crossed that bridge. I don't know how they did it, but they done it. So him. Well, it's more of a they. It's more of a group of musicians rather than where Living Color is. Also a group of musicians, but from the 80s. Oh, you're probably referring to CM Punk. We don't need to talk about wrestling. This Lieutenant Bob, for example, knows what happens when we start talking about wrestling. I get a little angry. I am enjoying the Rebel Red. And part of the reason I get to finally finish the bottle off of Rebel Red wine is I get to go to Gettysburg here in the near future, get to get back to the Gettysburg area. So I can make a stop at the Adams County Winery store and load up on more of my precious Rebel Red. Tears of Gettysburg, which is the white wine, it's good as well, but I'm a red wine guy. We got a whole bottle of free ships to the Wen downstairs as well, but nobody's opened it yet. I told you we're just talking about gibberish this week. I don't got no script. Partly because I've been hot at work on compiling notes for the video I'm setting out to try to document, and we're going to try to do at Gettysburg when we go in the near future. And also, I kind of got a bug up my butt earlier this week where it hit my mind like, I really haven't done Fort Necessity in Jumonville Glen, the opening battles of the French and Indian War in the 1750s. I really haven't done them due justice. Now, we've had scores of videos here on the channel about the French and Indian War, particularly about its early shots. And there are retracing history episodes. But the one I first did at Jumonville Glen many, many years back, I'm not happy with it today. There's stuff that younger me said unabashedly was fact that I can't be so confident today that I've seen such conflicting sources over what really happened on May 28th, 1754. So I've always wanted to go back and redo a video on the Glen, which I kind of did last year. I was very blessed. I got permission from the park ranger at Fort Necessity National Battlefield to document one of their annual commemorations of the Jumonville Glen affair. We were up at 7 a.m. down there, where there was a half a dozen of us, and it was a very small tour group. But it was a really awesome experience, and I got to document that. And that kind of covers every major facet of the incident that triggers the French and Indian War, which, if you do not know what I'm talking about, it was this massive international conflict that occurred in 1754 through 1763. The French and Indian War is the North American term for what Europeans refer to as the 7 Years' War. It was the world war of the mid-18th century. Very few conflicts were on its scale, and it kind of started because George Washington, who was then a young Virginian officer, was sent out by the British to try to take possession of the Forks of the Ohio, modern-day Pittsburgh. He failed at that mission. The French beat him to the Forks of the Ohio, constructed a fort down there, and Washington got into a little bit of a gunfight with the French at a place known as Jumonville Glen, named after the French officer Washington was facing off against, and that French officer died in a highly controversial manner. Nobody knows for certain how Jumonville died, but the French immediately labeled Washington as an assassin. They sent Jumonville's brother out to try to force Washington out of the territory. This brother was successful, but not before he got Washington to admit in writing that he had been sent out as an assassin, and that kind of spun the whole world into chaos in the mid-18th century. It makes you go, wait, why do we make this man General of the Continental Army? So anyways, I've been wanting to like do a new video on the events at Jumonville Glen and Fort Necessity, and I just never felt satisfied with what I produced. And then I just decided, like, well, why don't I tell the French perspective of these events? Because if anybody hears anything about the French and Indian War, we're going to talk about the American perspective, the British colonial perspective, because that's what George Washington's involved with. So we usually refer to his account of what's happening to him in those moments. We don't really talk about the French perspective. We mention the names like Jumonville and his brother. His name was Louis Coyon de Villiers. We talk about men like the Marquis de Montcalm, who essentially was in charge of all French forces in North America during the war. But we really don't get into their psychology. We don't really get into their eyes, how they perceive the conflict, what it meant to them, truthfully. So I decided, well, why don't I tell the story of Jumonville Glen and Fort Necessity strictly through the French perspective. So in a couple weeks, you can expect a episode of Retracing History that is going to be about that. We went back this week. I got to re-explore the Glen, re-explore Fort Necessity, and we're going to explore it from the French perspective, how they felt about British colonists invading their territory, and how they would use them, not only their own resources, but also their alliances with native tribes up around the Great Lakes region, how they're going to use that to their advantage to try to drive the British out of the Ohio River Valley in 1754. So I'm looking forward to getting that video together. I was really hoping I can actually have it done for this weekend. I had ordered, as I mentioned, I'm getting ready for a Gettysburg trip, so I've been doing notes on that. So the Jumonville Glen video is not finished yet. Or the French perspective, I should say. The French perspective of Fort Necessity video. It's not finished in editing yet, so that should be coming out in a few weeks' time. And before we continue talking, Lieutenant Bob had to dip out. Thank you for staying, Vo. And thank you for wishing me a good show. And so how does that work? Do you have like a wallet like attached to the side of your severed arm? How does that work in terms of buying beer? But I appreciate the offer. And of course, Wrangler has dropped in with a 420. Thank you for tuning in, Wrangler. Thank you for everybody tuning in tonight, especially because we really don't got a plot tonight. I didn't really have anything to sell tonight's show. It's really just me rambling. And probably going to get tipsy here soon. So it's going to be very, 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 very entertaining for you guys. May make some, regret some decisions for tonight's over. Anyways. So the main thing I want to cover when I go back to Gettysburg, because I was kind of sitting around like, okay, what do I really talk about? Because last time we went to Gettysburg, we did a whole bunch of stuff. Got the do a second chapter of Retracing the Streets. A lot of people seem to enjoy that. A lot of people seem to just enjoy, and I love walking historic towns, not just Gettysburg, but Gettysburg history is just packed on top of each other in multiple folds in each individual building, at least the ones that are over 100 years old. And that's not even talking about the American Civil War. So the first time I did the Retracing the Streets of Gettysburg, not a lot of people watched it. Not a lot of people still know about it. So I did a volume 2, and I got a substantial more viewership on that. So yeah, if you watched volume 2, go see volume 1. We did also the Robert E. Lee headquarters. We got to go out and explore a greatly overlooked cemetery in downtown Gettysburg. hold on one moment. The evil one known as the cat known as Lily, has decided to start clawing at my leg. What do you want, Lily? You don't like showing yourself on camera. You know, Fred and Ash don't have an issue. They'll get up over here in the middle of me recording videos sometimes. But you love being noisy, but you don't want to actually show yourself. Okay, we're gonna get down. Yes, yes, yes. The cat, the evil one, is near. At any moment, she can try to nip my ankle off. So we went back and saw this old cemetery that was devoted to the African American community in Gettysburg around the 19th and early 20th century. So not a lot of people actually got to see that one. And so I want to say it's episode 60 of Retracing History. We did a lot of stuff. I'm not going to have as much time this time when I go back to Gettysburg. In fact, this is really just going to be a day trip. So we're doing one major thing. We're hoping to cover the Irish Brigade. And it dawned on me, the Irish Brigade is one of the most famous units that fight in the American Civil War. I would argue they're second only to the Iron Brigade in terms of brigades that any average visitor to a Civil War site is familiar with. And the big stuff about the Irish Brigade is usually in 1862, talking about Thomas Francis Marr forming them, about his ties with Irish rebel movements that are happening over in Europe at the time, and how he kind of wants to use the Irish Brigade to kind of endorse his revolutionary ideals, and perhaps one day he can lead these troops now with combat experience back across the Atlantic Ocean and liberate Ireland from the British Crown. That didn't happen. What ended up happening was the Irish Brigade was raised at its peak strength. It was almost about 3,000 soldiers and a series of regiments. They get absolutely eviscerated at Antietam, which Marr will get reinforcements afterwards. And then they get eviscerated again at Fredericksburg. They lose half in their number at Fredericksburg. It was about 1,200 went into the fight at Fredericksburg. Half of them are casualties. And Marr felt that the federal government was conspiring against him after Fredericksburg, that they wanted to kill the brigade off. In truth, it seems it was more about the state of New York not wanting to use funds on existing regiments. They were more interested in just raising whole new units and then throwing them into the Eastern Theater, kind of just like, hey, we got fresh troops, go. They weren't as interested in sending those funds to reinforce experienced regiments. And the Irish Brigade was not just New York regiments, but that was the main building block at the start of the war. So in disgust, Marr resigned his command of the brigade. I basically declared to all the guys in May of 1863, and by this point, there's only about 500 of them. He basically declares all of them, you are, you've served well. There is no more Irish Brigade. Okay, bye-bye. I go to my comfortable home in New York now and to lecture about the Irish cause for independence while you guys got to continue fighting the war. Yeah, that was a really dick move, in my opinion, that Marr did. Just abandoning the brigade because he couldn't get the reinforcements he desired. And it kind of just leaves the 500 survivors of the Irish Brigade in the summer of 1863 in a fight for survival. Gone are the ideals that the brigade was formed upon. This is just simply about surviving this conflict. And the Irish Brigade will see action at Gettysburg, and they got a beautiful monument. The New York regiments of the Irish Brigade got a beautiful monument of the Celtic cross with the Irish wolfhound in front of it. It's overlooking the wheat field. Interesting detail, though. Everybody calls that the Irish Brigade Monument. It's not technically for the whole brigade. It is for the 4 New York units. The 3 New York regiments in the Irish Brigade, as well as a battery of artillery of Irishmen that were from New York as well. They're all commemorated on that monument. The other 2 regiments, the 116th Pennsylvania and the 28th Massachusetts, have their own separate regimental monuments. However, they're just feet away from the New York monument because they all fought in the same brigade. So, of course, they're all fighting in the same proximity. So, everybody, and the only big thing that gets talked about the Irish Brigade, I would say the general public knows vaguely about, is the general absolution given by Father Corby to the Irish Brigade. There's several paintings of this depicting. You might have even seen before. You're going to see, this. You're going to see this Father Corby. He's going to be in this purple stole and a black coat usually. He's going to be standing on a boulder. He's going to be talking to the Irish Brigade, who are predominantly Catholic, and he's kind of giving them a general absolution before they go into battle. It's been hyped up over the years by some of the veterans as well as other historians who pass on that Corby was doing this under gunfire. You know, it was this frantic moment, but yes, there was peace and harmony in this brief moment of time, and that the whole Second Corps of the Union Army listened in on it. And even General Winfield Scott Hancock, Second Corps commander, is taking his hat off in respect for the Irishmen. What I will say is, from my research, because I don't want to spoil too much from the video I'm about to make, there's a lot of embellishment to the General Absolution story, but there is more truth than fiction to it. So I'll leave it at that. And there's now a statue of Father Corby. And there's an identical one, not just at Gettysburg, but also at Notre Dame. So if you ever walk the grounds of Notre Dame, or you even watch the movie Rudy, you may see a statue in the background. It looks like a gentleman's holding something in the air as if he's catching something. That's Father Corby. And he's not catching a football. He is holding a Bible. So we'll talk about that. But no, a lot of people then talk about, they don't actually talk about what the Irish Brigade do. Like, what did they actually do when? They are mainly involved in the wheat field action on the Union left flank. They were sent in with the rest of the 1st Division of the 2nd Corps to plug a gap in the line made when Dan the Man Sickles, general of the Union 3rd Corps, decided to move his entire command almost a mile forward from the Union battle line on the high exposed ground between the Union and Confederate positions on the 2nd day at Gettysburg. Because, per Sickles, it was higher ground. We're going to do a Sickles video someday. It won't be immediate. It won't be on this trip. I don't have time, because if I'm going to do the Sickles story, if me and a humble collector are going to do Dan Sickles properly, it's going to be a multi-part series, most likely. There may be some alcohol involved, not on national park grounds. We're not going to drink while we're on the national park grounds. That's not what I'm saying. But, you know, may record something in a bar if I can organize with the property owner properly and just sit there and just shoot the shit about Sickles. So we'll get to him one day. The man who would be Spanish king almost. Anyways, so the Irish Brigade were sent down into the Wheatfield area on the Gettysburg battlefield to plug up the hole left by Sickles' movements earlier in the day. They really are only involved in what I would estimate about a half hour of fighting. They get on the field, they chase a group of Confederate soldiers off a rocky slope overlooking the wheat field. But no sooner they take that position, here come Confederate reinforcements. They outflank the Irish Brigade, and the Irish Brigade is forced to scramble back through the wheat field, and chaos ensues. And there's some interesting stories that result from the frantic retreat of the Irish Brigade, which I'm looking forward to talk about. And they return back to their positions on Cemetery Ridge, dig in, and they're really not involved in the rest of the fight. And the remains of the Irish Brigade, who had lost basically another 30% casualties during their fighting at Gettysburg. So they were down to 500 men. They leave with like 200 men. These 116 PA would be able to recruit soldiers, but they're all going to get mauled during the Overland campaign. And after the Overland campaign's over, the Irish Brigade is effectively dissolved. Now, there would be a second Irish Brigade. Vestiges, officers, and soldiers from the original would form a second one in late 1864, but, you know, it's kind of a shadow of its former self by that point. So, yeah, we're going to get to talk about the Irish Brigade. I feel personally that it's weird that this famous unit from the American Civil War does not really get its Gettysburg story talked about a lot. Everybody talks about what happened in 1862 to them. Nobody really talks in detail about what happened to them at Gettysburg, minus the general absolution. So looking forward again to do that. Looking forward to get back on the Gettysburg battlefield. And sometimes you just fall down rabbit holes, not literal rabbit holes. That wouldn't be good. That would break an ankle. But, you know, the figurative one that you're like, oh, what's this monument? You know, now that I'm standing here, what this the soldier describes in his diary is making a lot more sense now. When you get out there on the historic locations, you get to see things in a far different perspective. All right. Now, what was funny was, so, I've been doing the notes on the Irish Brigade, so I've been engrossed in, the history of, the Irish American experience of 1860, essentially. And then I get to decide, you know what? I'm going to go to Fort Necessity National Battlefield because I want to make this new video on retracing history in the French perspectives. And I'm starting to frantically research about the Coyon de Villiers family, who are the main characters, the main players of that Fort Necessity video. And I'm trying to research more about the French experience in America. So we're talking about the French American experience in the 1700s. We're talking about the Irish American experience in the 1800s. And like, yesterday my brain was so frazzled going into work. I'm just there like going, one of them, like, oh, my head is not hurting, but it is spinning because there was so much conflicting information going in and out of my brain, and none of it has to do with the vital necessities of life. That is a problem. It's like, no, turn key in car, nope, unlock door, turn off security, do the important stuff. And then on top of that, then I deal with what I'm doing my day job, which is also involved in the museum field. So I'm talking in depth about what our museum's about, which is a whole other category. So you get all these different categories just going for my brain, these different research projects. It just making me a little bit, just makes you a little stir crazy and stuff. So yeah, I went through a lot of coffee yesterday just to get me through. And if you hold on one moment, something is buzzing behind me. I would presume that is my phone. In the meantime, we're just going to have you watch a lovely, what's going on? What is going on over in Europe right about now? Now is in 1944.
It's still up. No, it ain't.
All right, we're back. Everybody's been suggesting me the cider house. I don't drink cider though. At least not commonly. So I don't know how I'll. I don't want to go to a place that I don't. Really. I don't have a true grasp on what their specialty is. But you're not the first person. Multiple people have been suggesting to me the cider house. So hopefully sometime if I get the chance, I will happily try it. But yeah, cider usually for me right now, my adult spirits, as it were, usually consist of Rocky Mountain Water, aka Coors Banquet, and if I'm wanting to splurge, maybe a little bit of a Rebel Led wine from Adams County Winery. So yeah, always willing to branch out though. You're always supposed to try new things, is what they tell you. So, what have I been up to reading? Well, since I'm doing all that research for a Fort Necessity video, I've been delving deep into the history of the Coyon de Villiers family. This is in addition to it be the family that Ensign Jumonville was attached to, and Jumonville's death is what causes the French and Indian War. The de Villiers family really I would describe them as being the Pattons of New France in terms of their stature. They were a noble family in the French American colonies, aka New France. The father had come over around 1700. And he served as an officer in the French Marines. Weirdly, it's weird to us as Americans, people in the United States of America, but the main regular military force in New France was not the infantry. It was actually the Marine force. So all of your commanding officers in a lot of French and Indian War battles on the French side are actually coming from the Marine Corps. So it's just how they had it administered. The Navy had jurisdiction over the colonies, since they're if you want to get to the colonies, you gotta take a boat ride. So the Marines, they were the main officer corps in defending New France. Anyways, this book that was translated by Samuel Russell, and a little blur behind him. Samuel Russell's a retired U.S. Army colonel and a graduate of VMI. This college we talked about when we were talking about the Battle of Newmarket a few weeks back. Yep, Army War College. So military veteran of the United States military. He translated and poured through numerous French documents to piece together the story of the Coyon de Villiers family, to get the public to understand it's not just Ensign Jumonville and his untimely death in 1754, that he was one of 6 brothers that actually served in the French French military during the 1730s for the 1750s. All of his brothers served for the new French military, for the record. They were serving in the colonies, not back over in Europe. So the book really goes into the bios on each of the brothers, on their father, and there's some in the appendix. There's a bunch of cool other little details. Like, this has a translation. I don't think it's the translation, because I've noticed some discrepancies with what other people describe about it, but there is a translation of Louis de Villiers' journal, which is pretty cool, because the journal that Louis Coyon de Villiers leaves behind is about when he is sent from French Canada down to Fort Duquesne, which is now Pittsburgh, and then he goes on an expedition to essentially avenge the death of Jumonville, his brother, which culminates in the attack on Fort Necessity and compelling George Washington to make his first and only military surrender. So there is a translation of it here in an elite military family of New France. So I've been reading that all week. I've been reading I don't know if it's a technical title, but The Irish Brigade at Gettysburg, which was actually a book published for Farnsworth House Publishing. Apparently, yes, the Farnsworth House actually has like a publishing house, or did at one point in the late 90s. So I've been reading that little book to get up to speed on what the Irish Brigade are doing at Gettysburg. So those are my main reads lately. Those are my main reads. See, the problem is I know I'm going to go for the sweet. And I don't need all that sugar in me. That's what scares me. Oh, it tastes good, but I ain't going to feel good later on. Granted, I say that as I drink wine. I'm a weird dude. I got the hat. I'm shocked nobody's commented on the Woody the Cowboy hat I have on tonight. This is actually one of the first things I was ever given when I started doing Living History. A friend of mine who actually appeared in some of the earlier Retracing History videos. This was his hat for many years that he wasn't really using, so he gifted it to me, and I used it for only for a few events as a civilian cap. I didn't really like it initially. There was just something about it was like offset on my head. I didn't like how it had curled over the years. I didn't like it with my Civil War impression. And because it never failed, every time I wore one, like somebody would come up and like, "Are you portraying the Amish?" It's just like, no, American Civil War. Do you not see the blue frock coat I'm wearing? Oh, the blue frock. Oh. So I stopped wearing it, and I strictly try to keep to only wearing forge caps so people understand that I am portraying a Pennsylvania volunteer infantryman during the American Civil War. So this has sit around for a while. I decided a couple weeks ago, because I was outdoors most of the weekend working, and I not put an adequate amount of sunscreen on, and I torched the back of my neck. This was the same weekend, by the way, why I couldn't do the Cold Harbor stream on its initial date. I basically lost my voice for a whole week after being outdoors all weekend helping out with this one event. So the next day, after I got scorched, I made sure first to put more sunscreen on, but I'm like, I need something to keep the sun off my neck. And this was like the only hat I can find. And I'm like, oh, for some reason, I prefer wearing it when I'm just my usual self than when I'm trying to do Civil War. So that's how I ended up with this cap on me. So it was the only hat laying on easy reach before I went live, because my hair's kind of going all over the place right now. So yeah, that's my Woody the Cowboy hat. I don't think it's nowhere on par to the hat that Gary Edelman has when he goes out and does his videos for the American Battlefield Trust. I'm not trying to compete with hats. If you're going to ask if your hat came with a set of toy guns and holsters, I decided to be nice instead. Oh, gee, thanks. Thanks for holding back. Thank you for holding back. A couple other things that have actually changed in the background. I don't know how this long. We do have a new flag back there. The detail about that is it's not. I don't know if this was ever actually put on a flag. Obviously, it's the Join or Die symbol. Everybody always automatically, when we see a coiled snake, we automatically think, okay, Gadsden flag. Well, the actual idea of the coiled snake came back a little bit earlier. And this is actually a newspaper clipping. This was an illustration done in the newspapers in 1754. And it was designed by Benjamin Franklin. And this was designed to show the British colonies that they had to unite together at the Albany Conference being held in Albany, New York. And essentially, this Albany Conference, these leaders from all the colonies were supposed to get together in the aftermath of the Virginian evacuation from the Ohio River Valley. Again, we're talking about Drummondville Glen and the Battle of Fort Necessity, the start of the French and Indian War. They were supposed to all come together and basically agree to send aid to each colony whenever they're under threat by the French and their native allies. Well, the conference really didn't go too well. Nobody really wanted to share their militia units and send them out of colonies. And this early effort to try to unify the British colonies on a unified front fell through. But in any case, the symbol stuck around. And everybody remembered this symbol that Franklin used to try to win support for the Albany Conference. And this join or die cartoon that he had created would show back up again throughout the 1760s and 70s. We head to the American Revolution. So I don't know if this was ever actually put on a flag. I know the John Adams miniseries had a colorized variant of it. I don't know if it ever went from paper to fabric for flag, but of course it inspired a myriad of similar symbols, most notably the Gadsden flag when we get to the American Revolution. So I picked this up, decided to add it to my flag collection. I don't know if it's going to stay in the background forever. Kind of just want to show it off for 1 week. Then I'll put the Serapis flag back in its rightful place. We also have, I got to go the other way around. We also have over here, I think this was in the D-Day stream. I'm pretty confident it was in the D-Day stream. If not, then you can see, again, I've been studying French American and Irish American experiences. Brain not doing so hot at the moment. This I picked up a few months back at Bushy Run Battlefield. They had a bin of Robert Griffin prints. And Robert Griffin's one of the leading artists depicting 18th century North American frontier life, especially when we're getting into native culture. And he's done a number of illustrations of battles from the French and Indian War, like, over here. That's a Robert Griffin painting showing George Washington commanding the Virginian and South Carolinian troops at the start of the Battle of Fort Necessity, the battle where he'll make his first and only military surrender. Well, I've always wanted to get the Griffin painting of Braddock's defeat, which shows General Braddock mortally wounded during his failed effort to capture Fort Duquesne. This battle occurred just 9 miles south of the modern-day city of Pittsburgh. It's one of the greatest military blunders for the British Empire, one of the worst defeats in military history. It has a legacy to itself. The Braddock became the symbol of all that is wrong with the British Empire in the eyes of American colonists, which really isn't fair to General Braddock. Braddock was put in a tough position. He did the best to his abilities, but unfortunately, he was in the wrong time at the wrong place. So I've always wanted to get the Griffin painting of Braddock's mortal wounding. There's you can't see it, of course, on the stream, but maybe somebody should do a mini video about the painting, because the painting has a story onto itself. Actually, hold on one moment. I got somewhere over here a guide that came with it. And no, that's not it. No, that's not it either. No, that's especially not it. All right, I found what I was looking for. I found what I was looking for. This particular print came with a printout. I don't think you're going to see because of the lighting. Oh, baby. It comes with a printout showing each of the key figures, and it gives you brief blurbs with the numbers on who each individual is. So the painting tells the story of Braddock's defeat and the key figures involved with it. So I've always wanted to have a copy of it. I'm not going to say it's the fanciest copy in the world. It's more of a poster print that was done for the 250th of the French Indian War back in the early 2000s. But got my hands on one finally. Got it in a cheap Walmart frame because I was not paying $20, $30, $40, how many dollars they wanted for a nicer frame. A plastic frame that clips on and off is just fine for my use at the time being. So I finally got there. So we got the Griffin's Fort Necessity up here, and we got Braddock's defeat down here. And unfortunately, you cannot see it I still have it up over here on the wall over here. We have Griffin's painting of the Battle of Bushy Run in 1763. So I got like all 3 Griffin paintings I wanted to own as a child are now in my collection in a poster print style. So pretty excited about that. So we added that to the background. The background, it's all fuzzy because we're using just the laptop's webcam. The very precise spot of the wounding is not known. If you go there today, it is a city. It's urban sprawl where the battle occurred. If you overlay the maps drawn of Braddock's defeat, and again, keep in mind those maps were drawn either back on the East Coast or back over in London or back over in Paris, not right there on the battlefield. So you got to take it with a pinch of salt about the terrain features. But if you overlay the period maps with the modern topographical maps, you can get a rough idea on where the fighting was. I know when I was on the tour a couple years back, and this is actually an early episode of Retracing History. We documented one of the battle walks that the Braddock's Battlefield History Center offers. It's a very small museum in downtown Braddock, but they're devoted to telling the story of Braddock's defeat and what happened where the city now stands. They roughly put the center of the British battle line to be now a abandoned ballpark in downtown Braddock. And we suspect it's the center of the line where Braddock and most of his officers were gathered when he's mortally wounded. So we don't know precisely where he falls, but by comparing period maps with a topographical map of Braddock today, you can get a rough idea on where Braddock and his command post was at the time of his mortal wounding. And it was a complete mess, the 3-hour fight. So nobody was writing down. And then several hundred meters this direction, nobody was really writing that. It was complete chaos. Nobody knew what was going on. That's why the British Army essentially imploded upon itself. The big thing that killed that army was, if they had been ambushed right at the river crossing, which the British were anticipating, they would have had the ability to fall out of the Monongahela River, get to the high ground south of the river, where the Kennywood Amusement Park is now situated, and possibly fortify there and basically tell the French to come at them. Instead, the French had decided to hold the ambush. They were advised by their indigenous allies to wait until the army gets across the river, let the British get a false sense of confidence. They've crossed the last river before they assault Fort Duquesne. And as they ascend the wooded ridge on the north side of the Monongahela River, that is when we spring the trap, when they're least expecting it. The French are going to be on the top of the ridgeline, blocking the British advance to Fort Duquesne. The native warriors will come down each side of the British column, and they'll catch the British in a crossfire. And Braddock had ordered the rear of the column at the double quick at the first sound of gunfire. At the same time, the front of his army was slowly withdrawing in a line of battle going toward the rear. So you have the main body moving at the double quick in 2 columns. You got the vanguard in a battle line. They smack into each other in the forest. And before they have time to untangle their battle formations, the native warriors are starting to target the officers. And once the officers start falling, the soldiers start panicking, and Braddock himself is going to be involved in trying to wrestle. He is going to go out there and try to wrestle the situation. So it's not like he's cowering behind a wagon or something. He's out there with his sword trying to encourage the men back into the fight. And that's probably why he gets wounded mortally. And Washington, who was his volunteer aide, will take charge of the army and lead them out of the forest, lead them all the way back to Cumberland, Maryland. That's my all right, now officially alcohol-infused depiction of Braddock's defeat. How did I do? Did I do good on the test? Do I get a star? Do I get a smiley face? Now, another thing I ended up doing this week, something I haven't done in a while. I decided to watch Gangs of New York, which I've seen it before. I've seen it several times, but it's been since the pandemic, at least. Since the pandemic, I've not sat down and watched Gangs of New York. If you're not familiar with the movie, it came out around 2002. It was directed by Martin Scorsese, and it was a passion project of his. He'd been trying to get made since the 1980s. He wanted to do this big historic epic about gang warfare in New York City during the American Civil War. Nobody really wanted to support the movie initially because historical epics were not doing so hot in the early 1980s, so they put them on the back burner. Wouldn't be until later on that people were willing to start making gambles again in the early 2000s. So they took a gamble, and Scorsese's film was a modest hit. The critics loved it. It doesn't really get talked about too much today, mostly because he would make some other projects later on. And one of his leads, probably in my opinion, the best part of the movie, being Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis would go on for greater accolades later in the decade. So Gangs of New York sometimes gets overlooked, but it is a historical epic about gang warfare set in American Civil War, New York City. So, it piques my interest. I do always find the depiction to be a little bit cartoonish of New York City. I do feel Scorsese was intending that. He wanted an exaggerated, almost a mythological depiction, because he's trying to essentially tell this, this story of a medieval war going on in, for all intents and purposes, a modern city environment, even though it's the 1800s. For comparing it to medieval times, 1800s is modern. So I think he kind of intentionally inflated the details of New York City to make caricatures out of it. But it's still a fun movie, and it's one of them, even though it's a very exaggerated depiction of New York City, it's still a believable, setting. Like, you don't feel that it's not made, like, everything's functioning on the sets. It's not that you're just walking on a soundstage. It's like, oh no, this is a living, breathing city. It may not be the New York City of 1863, but it is a city nevertheless, with all these fascinating characters in it. But man, I was reminded how Daniel Day-Lewis, that is my favorite role of his. I know he goes on to bigger claim, because he'll be in There Will Be Blood in 2007 as Daniel Plainview. And then, of course, he portrays Abraham Lincoln in 2012. So he goes on to much greater claim later on after Gangs of New York. But Bill the Butcher Cunning is just one of the most mesmerizing villains ever been put in on film. Everything he says is coarse and horrible, and I do not condone it, but there's just something charming to how he portrays Bill the Butcher. You never know when Bill is going to snap type deal. So you're constantly on edge. You're constantly watching. You're, kind of laughing. Oh, that's funny. Very funny, Bill. Please don't kill me. It kind of just seeps through the screen with, like, everybody else just kind of playing along with Bill's authority, because at any moment, his charming nature is going to turn into a vicious killer. So the best part of the movie is still Daniel Day-Lewis' performance. I'm just waiting anytime. Please, Leo, please get off screen. Please, Cameron Diaz, get off screen. I want Daniel Day-Lewis. I know he's the bad guy. I know he is this unapologetic, racist murderer, sacrilegic figure who'll do anything to stay in charge of the 5 Points area of New York City. But man, he's just so mesmerizing to listen to and talk to. You just want to hear him talk for hours. It's kind of like Dan Sickles. It's like, your grasp of the world is so abhorrent, yet so fascinating that I'm not going to stop you. So yeah, tune in and watch that this week. Guess because I was like, Irish American experience in America during the Civil War. Where can I find something? Gangs of New York. Yes, totally. That's let's watch Bill the Butcher Cunning and the movie's depiction of the Know Nothings, the Natives Party. Let's just watch them run roughshod over Civil War era New York City, which the Know Nothings were a real faction that were around and were a key political component in the creation of the American Civil War, but they really were not around, at least they did not have the presence during the time of the, hold on one moment. They really did not have the presence during the 1860s. They were around the 1850s, and you may say, well, that's just a few years off. No, that's a very big distinction. The Know Nothings appeared in the mid-1850s. They had a candidate for the 1856 election. Of course, James Buchanan is for the Democrats is actually who wins. And then the Know Nothings decide, let's be quiet on some of our more radical ideas, especially our more xenophobic ideas, and let's merge in with the Republican Party. And, the two kind of came together, and that's how you end up with the 1860 election of President Lincoln. The Know Nothings merge in with disgruntled Whigs, merging together with the initial variant of the Republican Party. They all kind of come together, and you give the power that the Republican Party has going into the 1860 election. So the movie, really uses a lot of the iconography, a lot of the rhetoric of the know nothings, but they're emplacing it in 1860s New York. They were pretty silent once you get to the 1860s. They were still there, but they were pretty much evaporated into the Republican Party by the 1860s. But it's a fun little tidbit that most people will not even know about to begin with. You know, most people will not even know who the nativists were, the know nothings, will not even know who these people were if it was not for the movie Gangs of New York. All right. And that's kind of all I got. I just kind of want to come on, do the weekly stream, just kind of kick back, relax, talk, see how everybody's doing this week. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to get back to work. Once I go off stream, I'm going to get back to editing those notes. Maybe see if I can get a little bit more done of a retracing history video. There will be no Saturday upload, so no retracing history, no artifact highlight. I just sadly ran out of time this week because I'm prepping to produce more videos. But hopefully next week we'll have a new video of retracing history that I can educate you guys with. And I say one more detail. So I've been ending my videos lately where I'll say, you know, hit the like button to let the YouTube algorithm know that you do want to be educated by social media. Not educated, educated. I know what I'm saying. It's a joke. The reason I'm saying it is I'm still studying for my major in history, so I don't have my degree yet. So I've been making a gesture that, well, I don't have the funny paper, so I can't say officially I am an educator of history. But that's not stopping me saying I'm an educator of history. And I don't even know who began the educating word. It wasn't me. It was, I want to say it was either one of my school teachers or a friend of mine in like middle school. That's how far the joke goes back, this edumacation idea. So I've just kind of adopted it as a joke, the little jab at the secondary education system in the United States of America. I can't educate you because I don't got the funny paper, but that doesn't stop me from educating you. So if you're ever confused why I'm saying at the end of videos, it's a joke. I'm just playing on words. I'm not being too serious on it. I know a few people vote in the comment section that the joke really wasn't going to the viewer. They were like, why do you say educated? Why can't you just say educated? I'm just having fun. Just having fun. I like having fun here on Redot Productions. History's fun. It's not just boring dates and obscure people. It's fun, obscure people. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. And before you depart, if you want to hit the like button, because when you hit the like button, lets the YouTube algorithm know that you do want to be educated by social media. See, there's the joke. There's the joke. Don't freak out. If this is the first time you've watched, thank you for tuning in. This is not me at full strength. This is me on 1 bar of energy, about ready to pass out. So go to first, before you subscribe to the channel, go watch an episode of Retracing History, and then I would appreciate your subscription to be the first notified when we go live Thursdays at approximately 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I strive to have a video uploaded every Saturday. That won't be happening this week. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting us here at Redot Productions to keep us awake on the road, you can donate for a cup of coffee. Our donation link is in the description below, our Ko-fi link. And yeah, I think that covers it all. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to hit the music, and I'll see you next week, hopefully, in some capacity. Have a good night, everybody.
Yes, we'll reel around the flag, boys will reel it once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom. We will reel it from the hillside, all together from the plain, shouting a battle cry of freedom.